Welcome to DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show. Send Ray, myself, and our distinguished guest your questions using hashtag DisrupTV, and we'll do our best to answer them live and certainly get back to you after the show. It's my privilege to introduce my co-host. He's the CEO and founder of Constellation Research, best-selling author of Digital Business, regular contributor to Harvard Business Review, ZDNet, and many other publications, and in my humble opinion, one of the top futurists to follow on Twitter at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wang, to DisrupTV.
Happy Friday. We are here on DisrupTV here with my co-host, Vala Afshar as well, one of the top chief digital evangelists for Salesforce, top follow on CIO and CMO, and recently interviewed everywhere in the Bay Area, all in one full sweep on his awesome Twitter usage. Also definitely an author himself. So this is Friday. It's the best day of the week, the best hour of the week. Who do we have to kick it off today?
It's a privilege for us to have one of the top CEOs in the tech industry joining us as our first guest. We have Fred Laluyaux, President and CEO of Aera Technologies, an entrepreneur at heart. Fred founded his first company when he was 23. Ray, what were you and I doing at 23?
I was doing an internship. I was unemployed.
You were a DJ.
You were a DJ, that's right. Prior to launching Aera, Fred was CEO of Anaplan, which he grew from 20 people to 650 employees and over $1 billion valuation. Before that, Fred was had executive positions at SAP, Business Objects, and ALG Software. You can follow Fred on Twitter at FLALUYAUX. Welcome back, Fred, to DisrupTV.
Thank you for having me. I want to know what Ray's drinking to have all this energy on a Friday.
Hey, I've just been in Vegas for 4 days. I should be dehydrated by now. No. Hey, I actually do have a question. Were you at the Bernard reunion that was going on this week?
No, I was not. I couldn't make it, but I would have loved to do it.
I've seen pictures all over the place. All right, well, hey, welcome to the show. You are in one of the hottest spaces, and this is really that intersection between AI, the intersection between RPA, the intersection between business process, apps, and automation all in one spot with intelligence. So I want to ask you a quick question because a lot of people get confused as to the space, and I always get this question, and especially about the stuff that you're doing. How is cognitive automation different from RPA and process mining for that matter?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, all these categories are being formed, right, as we like to say, and they all have a defined spot in what I call the new digital roadmap or landscape for large enterprises. So make it very simple. What we call cognitive automation is the automation and the augmentation of how decisions are made and executed in an enterprise. And I see more RPA as a way to automate how processes are being run in the enterprise. So pretty much one sits on top of the other. And they are very complementary, but they don't really necessarily overlap. What's confusing is the word cognitive, the word automation, the word augmentation that we're throwing everywhere, and I'm probably the first culprit for that. But the reality is we're really focusing on moving from people doing the work supported by machines, and basically in this case computers, to computers doing the work controlled by people. Right, so it's the automation, the augmentation of the decision-making process, and bring it down to real life is how can I automate the process and what supports creating a promotion if I'm a CPG company, defining the forecast of my product. It's very, very pragmatic, and we're basically resolving some pretty old problems when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, for most businesses, unfortunately, important decisions are still made in the same way as it has been for decades. As you said, people supported by systems taking days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months to identify root cause and to really be able to speed up the process of decision making. And now the biggest driver I see is not only speed, but also personalization in terms of having the contextual intelligence where decision-making is based on unique persona, unique company, industry.
Correct.
Tell us a little about your company and your approach to doing something that's, frankly, in my opinion, critically important for not just companies to be relevant, but to compete and win.
Yeah, I think it's well, I agree, of course, with you on that statement, and I think it's really a question of survivals for a lot of them. I mean, the fundamental pillars that have enabled very large companies who make and ship and sell goods around the world to survive are being shaken to the core. One of our clients was telling me the other day, look, what we basically do is we sell X number of billions of dollars of water and soap. Another client is water and sugar. That's the way they kind of like to summarize what they do. And they say, well, the fundamental core of our business is people buy our brands because they recognize them. And before you put shampoo on your kid's head or you feed them with some sparkling water, you want to make sure that you recognize the brand and is attached to a level of quality. But the second reason why people buy from us is that wherever you go around the world, you can find the product. You go to the convenience store, anywhere, you find the product. Two things, the world is moving from macro brands to micro brands, so that's shaking and they have to adjust very quickly, and they've done that already. But the second big difference is that there are companies in the e-commerce world that are basically saying, you know what, you don't need to go to the store anymore. So now you've got multi-billion-dollar businesses thinking, hey, if we don't change the way we think about this problem, and if we don't do it very quickly, we're the next brick and mortar. We're the next ones to go. So that premise here for us at Aera was, okay, we know that cognitive automation, it must happen. And if you look back in history, if you look at the different waves of automation, it's going to happen. There's no doubt there. I think the train here has left the station. So what do we do about it? Well, we looked at the stack and we said, well, how do Google do it? How does Google do it? How does LinkedIn do it? How does all this internet scale company run complexity, volume, real-time computation at scale, at this massive scale? Well, we in the enterprise world are still struggling to put that much data into a system and push it to another system and give you a dashboard and all this stuff. So what we looked at, we said, what if we could leverage that internet scale technology in the enterprise to resolve the problem of real-time collaboration, real-time computation, managing for the first time both the level that you need to make decisions, the level of transaction that allows you to execute those decisions with the right level of complexity. Now, we're not seeking for complexity, but some decisions that you have to make are increasingly complex. I mentioned earlier promotions, right? So if you're CPG companies, you deploy billions of dollars a year to incentivize your consumers to buy this product at this point in time on the shelves. Well, today consumers are walking around the aisles with a smartphone and they can balance promotions and they can, the speed at which the promotions have to be adjusted is increased dramatically. And if you don't have a digital operating system that allows you to do that by sucking in data coming from Nielsen, your point of sale data, your supply chain data, and coming up with that plan, you can have the best modeling tool, you can have the best collaboration platform in the world. Human brains, even in network, cannot compete with the power of a well-run, what we call skill. So the vision of Aera is to really enable that cognitive automation, and we had to resolve tackle a few big problems technically along the way.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and really, the byproduct of this is what's interesting, right? You're talking about the future of decisions, right? Really helping people get there faster. Now, the biggest problem we're seeing right now with AI is not the algorithms, it's not the connection points, it's not having the compute power, it's getting the right set of curated data, right? Getting these curated data sets are so hard to do, and so we're seeing lots of false positives and false negatives. Now, how do you address that with the type of work you're doing?
I think I completely agree that that's the first problem. The first problem is getting the data, right? But there is another problem which I'll talk about as well. So how do we do it? Well, we go down to the core. We go down to the bottom of the ocean, as we like to call it, and we build basically crawlers that are able to build a hot replica of every single transaction happening in a company across, the multitude of ERP systems and planning tools that they have. We bring all this data into a single instance of the cloud, and now when the data is in our system and maintained, in real time, the picture is maintained in real time, then we can work the data. We can augment it. We can derive from these billions of transactions we're gathering every day. We can derive the business metrics that allow you to think about your business, that allow you to understand what your business. So think about this mega model that has time series, which is and maintained over time dynamically. With one of our clients, we have 2,800 crawls a day. We crawl SAP, we crawl Oracle, we crawl all these.
Wow.
Things. Yeah, it's massive. So we start by crawling 2 or 3 years of historical data to have our baseline, and then we maintain that hard copy. And that's a pretty difficult thing to do, but we've deployed it at scale with some of the largest companies in the world. So it's pretty cool. And once you have that data, you're in like data science heaven, because now I've got a normalized model, end-to-end visibility in my enterprise with time series. And we have built the data science platform that allows us to deploy the algorithms. But that leads to the second part, right? It's not just about data science, by the way, it's also about modeling. A lot of the decisions that you make don't require data science. They require just complex models that that mimic basically how you address a specific problem. You have open orders with no matching inventory. What do you do? You have an increase in forecast here. What do you do? Those are very simple problems, but we can automate that. The second problem that you find with AI in the enterprise is, how do I connect the output of the algorithms with the real life, with the users? How do I operationalize the output of the algorithm? So here we had to build a whole new set of software we call the cognitive workbench. It's basically, think about it as an inbox. You have your inbox where you send me an email, and you have your inbox where Aera is telling you what to do. And you have multiple skills running. You have a forecasting skill, you have a demand planning skill, you have a promotion skills. And it's saying, hey, Ray, I recommend that you increase your forecast for this product by 1.2% next month. And you say, why? And you can answer. And then you can say, okay, Aera, please do it. So the point is, in this single platform, you can have multiple skills running in real time, and you can operationalize the skills, and we learn from the interaction that you'll have with the system in real time. So it's pretty cool.
That's wild.
Cool. Fred, last week we had Tasha Keeney, who's the principal analyst covering autonomous vehicles for ARK Invest. And she had an interview 2 weeks ago with Elon Musk. And she asked Elon, when are we going to be at a point where you can get in your car and take a nap and go from A to B, so level 4, level 5 autonomous?
Yeah.
And Elon's response was that we're feature complete. The code is there. For the next 2, 3, 4 years, we just have to convince the governing bodies that this is safe. And we'll be just tweaking the algorithm, but for the most part, we're feature complete, is what he said. So my question to you, as the Elon Musk of autonomous enterprise, how close are we to—
I'll take that anytime.
How close are we to being feature complete? Because you're combining AI with real-time understanding of business performance, so that this augmented intelligence can help a fluid decision-making process across multiple lines of business in real time. So can you give us a sense, take us to the future? When do we have the autonomous enterprise?
Or even a use case if you have one.
Yeah, it's mad, guys. When we launched, it's mad. It's happening now. Literally, like when we talked to 2 years back, I told you it would take 2 years, and we're now 2 years in. And where we were in our thinking process about this is around really augmentation. So as I said, Aera provides you with real-time recommendations. You get into your workbench, you can say accept, reject. I learn from every single interaction, so I can build very nice analytics and intelligence around, look, this is how people interact with the skills in real time. And our go-to-market, our approach with our pioneer customers, some of the largest companies in the world, was like, look, we're not going to automate all these decisions. We're going to actually build that interactions and learn from the users. And the more we went, the more we heard, no, actually, guys, we need to go all in on the algorithms. We need to go all in on the automation. And I'll tell you why. some of the problems. I'm going to stick to the same example of promotion because I think it's really telling. The complexity and the speed at which those decisions have to be made is such that basically even the best people in charge of building those promotion plans are overwhelmed. They cannot do it. You talked about RC root cause analysis earlier. Well, you look at the work that we do and the compute power that is required to identify a problem in your supply chain and define what the consequences are. You know, you could not do it even if you throw 1,000 humans on the best planning tool, on the best modeling with the best CPUs. It just wouldn't be possible. So what our clients are saying is like, can we move as soon as they feel like the algorithms and the skills are mature enough? Can we move to the full automation and free our people from these super painful, frustrating tasks, basically, where we're asking very smart people to repeat day after day the resolution of the problems. And fundamentally, if you think about what we did is, it is this big transactional bedrock of ERPs. I talked to one of the largest F&B companies in the world. They have 86 different ERPs, but the problem is the same when you've consolidated to 2 or 3, which we have some clients as well. And on top of this, there is a massive pyramid made of people, process, tools, data, collaboration platform. And if you're an information worker inside that pyramid, your value is as much your understanding of the market and how to do your job than how to actually work the pyramid. If you see what I mean. Like, I know who to call when there is this instance, I know which systems to get to. And that is 50% of people's time. We get rid of that at once. We can automate all of that and then augment the decision-making process, right? You think people work at twofold. Outside in, I'm looking at the market, I'm understanding how to make the right planning decision, and inside out, which is how do I make it work inside my company? We automate the second part, we augment the first part. So the impact is absolutely massive. And we have now, I'm not going to tell you that it's massively deployed yet, but we do have some processes running 100% autonomously, and we have the validation from the clients that if you look at demand forecasting, you asked me for an example, that the products that are being forecasted with Aera, in some cases have reached what's called perfect forecast, which I didn't think was possible.
Wow.
So, no, but it's math. It's not complicated. It's not sci-fi. It's simple math, and you can actually get there.
So the future is here. It's just unevenly distributed.
Yeah.
Was famously said. But I mean, just a quick follow-up question. It just feels, when I listen to you, that companies that take advantage of your technology are going to be relevant and grow, and the companies that don't are going to die. So is it a human right? Is it our obligation as businesses to companies access to the cognitive algorithms and innovation that companies like yourself develop? How do we make sure that we don't continue to expand the digital divide where companies just don't understand the power of this augmented intelligence automation, and unfortunately, they're not going to be around for long?
Wow, that's a heavy loaded question here. I have a lot of thoughts going in my mind, including Darwinism, but maybe we don't go there.
But you're doing it. Like you're doing it now. You're speaking.
Hey, it's digital Darwinism, guys. Come on.
Yeah,
you know,
digital Darwinism.
God.
We need to coin this one, digital Darwinism. But to be serious, that's a good one. I beat you on that one. So, no, look, a few constructive points on that. The first one is, unlike the last generations of innovation in the enterprise world that required massive investment and that required massive amount, very long, implementation time, this is really fast. So if you haven't started yet and you want to jump in, for us to crawl one of the largest instances of leading ERP in the world, 3 years of historical data took us 54 hours, and then we were done, and the data is ready to go. So the barrier to entry is very low. So it's okay if you're starting a bit late. The second thing that surprised me, with a bit of experience, is that we're literally talking about this truly at the C level. This is an executive conversation.
Boardroom discussion.
Some of the largest companies in the world, and in my entire career, I'd never seen that. It feels like
This is huge.
people are fully aware. And what's happening is, I was talking with one of our guys yesterday, coming back from a meeting, saying, look, this company was all on this journey for collaboration, improving visibility. And already after one meeting, they're going like, well, why are we doing this? Why do we care about visibility, transparency, and collaboration? We need to think automation. And it's a, when we launched that thing, this concept of self-driving enterprise and cognitive automation was July 2017. And Ray, you were previewed to that process. And
I was with you at the Bulgaria hotel.
But everybody was very cynical, going like, oh, where is he going now? It's completely crazy. You were not. Thank you for that. The reality today is everybody's talking about this. And the feedback we got from those execs was not, wow, you guys are so smart. The feedback we got from those execs were like, where the heck have you been? We've been waiting for that for a long time. So it's a long answer, but I think it's two-part. The first one is it's common sense, and it's really where the heck have you been? And the second part is the adoption is very fast, and you can turn that into value in a very fast way. So I think you'll see that it'll be faster than you think.
Keep educating and inspiring. That's your role model CEO. Really appreciate it.
We are here with Fred Laluyaux, the Elon Musk of cognitive automation, quoted by Vala, President and CEO at Aera Technologies. You can follow him at FLALUYAUX. Last on episode 89 in January 2018. Thanks for being on the show. Happy Friday.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
You're terrific. You're terrific. This is why Friday is my favorite part of the week, because we get exceptionally bright CEOs, and they're painting a vision that business leaders need to really carefully study. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And you're ignoring AI and automation, again, in my humble opinion, you're not going to be around. So speaking of leadership, speaking of future of work, speaking of building relevance and influence, our next guest is Dickson Tang, author and keynote speaker and influencer. Dickson has helped people and organizations get creative towards future of work and business so that they can unlock ideas and opportunities in new products and services and processes and new business model innovation. He's an author of a book titled Leadership for the Future of Work, 9 Ways to Build Career Edge Over Robots with Human Creativity. Every business of every size and every industry should read this book. Dickson also runs a corporate training company working with leaders and executives from some of the largest, most well-known brands in the world. He's a fantastic follow on Twitter at IMDICKSON, capital letter T. Welcome, Dickson, to DisrupTV.
Hey, hi, Vala. Hi, Ray. Thanks for having me here. Great to be here. Happy Friday, everyone.
It's Saturday in Singapore. Thanks for being a great sport.
That's right. It's 2 in the morning in Singapore.
It's like 2:20 in the morning. So, hey, thanks for being on the show. I saw you last at the Marina Bay Sands. We're hanging out in Singapore and the Tech HR conference. That was kind of great. Your book is really seminal because we just talked about cognitive automation. We talked about where AI is going, but you advocate for something really important, which is how do we actually beat the robots with creativity? So let's talk about this book here, right here. Congratulations on your book, Leadership for Future of Work, 9 Ways to Build Career Edge Over Robots with Humans. Why did you write this book?
Wow, Ray, that's a great question. Let me answer it in 2 manners. Firstly, I really want to write a book since I was a child, like maybe 6 years old, 7 years old, because my mom brought me to libraries, bookshop in Hong Kong, and I wish, oh, one day it would be cool if my book is there, right? So that's just like a childhood dream. And why a book on creativity? Wow, actually there's a story behind that. You want to hear?
Yes.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Wow, that happens when I was at 10 years old. I was studying in a primary 5 in a school in Hong Kong. So it's something like the 5th grade in the US system, I think, like around 10 years old.
Yep.
It was a mathematics class, and I consider myself a very hardworking student. So I drill all the maths questions. I memorized the multiplication table. 9 times 1 is 9, 9 times 2 is 18, da, 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 da. And then one day, my math teacher, he asked a question to everybody in the class. The question is, it takes 9 minutes to cook 1 hard-boiled egg in the kitchen. 9 minutes to cook 1 hard-boiled egg. And now we are cooking 7 hard-boiled eggs. So how many minutes it take to cook 7 hard-boiled eggs? I immediately up my hand. And I shout out, 63 minutes, sir, 63 minutes, because 9 minutes to cook 1 egg, and now we are cooking 7 eggs. Wow.
9 minutes, 9 minutes, 9 minutes.
You know what happened? The teacher say, hey, Dickson, I appreciate that. Yeah, hands down. In this case, the correct answer should be
9 minutes.
9 minutes, because we are cooking everything in one go. Wow. I was speechless almost for 2 minutes. I really don't know how to respond. But thinking about it, that's good, because that's the epiphany of creativity. And I know there's something called creativity in this world. And now fast forward to year 2016, right? Year 2016. I was reading an article by one of the creativity guys in an advertising agency. So he's like a global creative director. And he wrote something on the paper and say, we are all born creative, but somehow we educated creativity out of us at school.
Yes.
We are all born creative. We just got it educated out of us at school. Well, the moment I saw that, my childhood incident, the hard-boiled egg incident, immediately came to picture. And then I told myself, wow, I have to do something about it, because at that moment, I'm also reading some articles from the World Economic Forum. They're saying that creativity is one of the fastest growing skill in demand right now. And I told myself, Dickson, you got to do something.
Sure.
The future needs creativity, but the school does not teach us.
That is an awesome quote. I remember it's Tom Kai-Meng, the worldwide creative officer, Ogilvy. He's the co-chairman.
Right.
That is Tom Kai-Meng. And I think
think
that is an awesome quote.
It is.
Especially in Asia when you're just beaten out of you.
So when I saw this one, okay, my childhood incident, this like hard-boiled incident in my primary school, wow, immediately came back.
Hopefully you're not allergic to eggs. I mean, it's a great story, but we all have those stories where we recognize the importance of creativity. And you're right, World Economic Forum lists the most important skills for 2020, and creativity, critical thinking, negotiating, and so on and so forth is among the top 10. But at the same time, the World Economic Forum projects that 50% of jobs are susceptible to automation by 2025. We have Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, who wrote the book AI Superpowers, who believes in a 60-minute interview that 40% of jobs are, including what you call white-collar jobs, are susceptible to automation in less than a decade. So what are some of the 9 ways, because I often feel Ray is going to replace me with a robot soon on DisrupTV. So
You're too creative, dude. You're too creative. I don't know what's going to happen.
What are some ways where I can continue to be on DisrupTV and not be replaced by a robot?
Wow. Okay. That's a great question, and well, the way I see it is, a lot of people think that, I'm not a creative person because I'm not in the advertising, I'm not in the design, I'm not in the graphic design industry. But actually not true. Okay, I believe that everyone is born creative, but somehow we just need to activate the creativity within us. Okay, the way I see it is there are actually 3 ways that you can activate your creativity. I call it the 3I, which is featured in my book. Briefly, the 3I are, number 1 is the individual mindset. So what does that mean is, if you're running a company, if you're running your team, what you need to do is you need to encourage your team members to embrace this creative individual mindset. So what does that mean is, that means you have to keep saying, why not? keep saying why not. Instead of saying, oh, cannot, can't be done, you just need to encourage people to say, why not? And why not we do things in a new way? So that's the first I, individual mindset. The second I is what I call infrastructure. By saying infrastructure, meaning that your company culture, the policies, the environment, the culture, and so forth. So for company who want to build a creative workforce, who want to build a creative human capital, they need to make sure that they build a conducive environment. That means a pro-creativity environment. Okay, encourage people to share experience and even to celebrate failure. Okay, that is really important because in Asian countries context, okay, failure is something not good, but actually we should all embrace failure because the more you fail, the faster you go to success, right? So that's the second I call it the infrastructure. And the third I, of course, is really important. It's about ideas. Right? It's about empowering your team to come up with ideas using different methodology to generate ideas as well as to process through all these ideas. Because I believe that the more ideas you generate, the more revenue you will get because you will get more product revenue, services revenue, or even like optimize your work process. Right? So in summary, these are the three ways: individual mindset, infrastructure, ideas.
Terrific. Makes sense. Makes total sense.
Yeah. Wow. So, hey, part of this thing, I remember there's one chapter, and I was just flipping back through in there, chapter 4, how to lead effectively in uncertainty. And I thought it was interesting because you were spending some time talking about VUCA, and we'll explain the acronym later. But the point being is, this is actually one of the big challenges as in this era of disruption, and especially what's happening with the speed that's going on with AI. Talk about VUCA and talk a little bit about leadership there.
Sure. In the traditional sense, a leader is supposed to know everything because you're running a team. You are managing people, you're leading people, people expect you to know everything. But now in this VUCA world, there's no way a leader can know everything, man. Right? So there's a fundamental shift in terms of leadership. Right? You need to shift from okay, I know it all to someone like work in progress, a leader work in progress. Right? So the key things in the future of leadership is about speed trumps perfection. I always believe that speed trumps perfection. That means by the time you get all the information to make a decision, you're gonna miss out the opportunity. So you have to take action. Okay, so you have to start, right, to be great. You don't need to be great to get started, right? Exactly like what Vala mentioned just now. So yeah, you just need to keep moving, keep going, get going, and like build a version 1, version 2, 2.1, 2.2, etc. So speed really trumps perfection. So don't wait, just get going.
Sure, that's terrific advice. You know, when you speak to coaches in the athletic arena, most will say you can't teach speed. There's certain capabilities, how high you jump, how fast you run, that you know, some are gifted and born, and others are not. Now, when it comes to business and leadership, I believe that, you know, you can teach leadership. It's not something that you're born with, and you know, you either have it or you don't. In my 20 years of managing, having the privilege of managing people, I felt that I saw growth and I saw leadership skills developed in individuals post-university. So my question to you is, do you believe that leadership can be taught? And if so, when you're working with a client, what are some of the foundational elements that you want them to develop, like the empathy muscle, the communication muscle, the ability to listen muscle, and humility, and so on and so forth? What are the maybe 3 pillars that you think are must-have skills to be a good leader when we think about future of work?
Sure. Okay. You raise a very good point. Typically, leadership is what I call the experiential knowledge. That means you gain it like through experience, like through working, through leading a team, through real project. It's not something typically you can learn in a classroom. Okay, but having said that, if you can read some like leadership books, get some fundamental knowledge about leadership, that would be, that would be useful. The way I see it in the future is no matter which industry you are in, if you want to be a great leader, basically you need to pay attention on three things. Okay, so number one is you need to lead yourself in a very positive manner, because nowadays change is the constant, and sometimes you are lost in the middle of all these like mega trends, and sometimes you feel frustrated, and sometimes you just feel completely lost, right, in the business world. So you need to stay motivated. You need to like lead yourself positively. So that's number one tip. And then secondly is when you lead your team, you need to give them some space to make error, to make mistakes, because without mistake, they can't grow. Right? So you need to give them some leeway, give them some space. And thirdly, when you lead the organization, okay, you need to make sure that your organization is hitting the mega trend. Right? There's no point for you to lead an organization which is against the mega trend. So these are the three fundamental advice I would share with you guys. Is like no matter which industry you are in, right? So basically, you want to be a good leader, you need to make sure that you lead yourself effectively, lead the team, and also make sure that you lead the organization with the trend, fly with the trend.
Yeah, we do tend to glamorize leadership. Have you ever lost a customer? Have you ever fired someone? Have you ever given someone difficult feedback without causing resentment? Have you ever been in a room where people expect you to have the answer and you're completely lost? If you haven't felt those experiences, I'm telling you, it's easy to read a book and talk about it, but like you said, it's something you have to experience.
Exactly. So that's why when I work with the corporate people, as well as I work with like college students, I always encourage them to have a board-based education. So that means if you're a college student, instead of just studying your major subject, go and take other elective classes. Volunteer in a community, right? Do something different, be different, do something different, so that you can get some exposure, and so that you are not like a living within the academic. Right? So that's my advice to the youngsters, to the students. On the other hand, to the corporate people, I always encourage them to look outside of the industry. Right? So for example, if you are in the construction industry, right? So you should look into the logistic, or maybe if you're in the technology, you're in the 3D printing, you need to look outside, because I give you an example, right? 3D printing, a lot of people think that, oh, it's related to the construction industry, related to the manufacturing industry, but actually the rise of 3D technology actually disrupt the supply chain, because there's no separation between the material production and the material usage, right? So it actually disrupts the supply chain. So the point here I try to make is no matter which industry you're in, you always need to pay attention outside of industry, because nowadays there's a lot of like crossover, there's a lot of like disruption actually happening outside in. So so that's my advice.
Well, hey, Dickson, one last final message that you like to share with everybody in preparing themselves for the future. What's your one last piece of advice?
2 words: be creative.
Be creative. We will lead with that. All right, we are here live in middle of the night in Singapore here. So Dickson Tang, author and speaker. You can follow him at I'm Dickson T, IMDICKSONT. You can get his book on Amazon, Leadership, Future, Work, Career, and Creativity. So you can check it out. Published December 30th, 2017. Thanks for being on the show today, and happy Friday, Saturday for where you are.
Thank you, Dickson. You were terrific. Congratulations on your book.
Thanks you, Vala. Thank you, Ray. Thanks for having me here. Yes.
Yeah, it's so important to, he talked about infrastructure. People are not afraid of failure; they're afraid of blame. So having a safe space to innovate and to be creative, I think is critically important. So your surroundings has a lot to do with your ability to explore and be creative. Our final guest is first ballot Hall of Fame inductee of DisrupTV guest. Because Brett and I have learned from her so much. We have Heather Clancy, an award-winning business journalist specializing in transformative technology and innovation and translating tech speak into business benefits. Boy, every CIO needs to be watching. Heather's articles have appeared in Entrepreneur, Fortune, New York Times, and many more major publications. She's the co-author of Niche Down, How to Become Legendary by Being Different, which Heather co-authored with Chris Lockheed. As Editorial Director of GreenBiz, Heather covers the role of technology in enabling clean energy, sustainable business strategy, and low carbon economy. She's an awesome follow on Twitter at GreenTechLady, GreenTechlady. Welcome back, Heather, to DisrupTV.
Thank you, Vala. I appreciate it. I love the creative use of finger pointing on the gallery here.
We wasn't sure what side we were looking at.
No, it was perfect. It was perfect in the gallery view.
It depends where you are on the Brady Bunch screen.
I know.
How does this work?
Hey, it worked for me. Hi, guys.
Welcome back. How you doing? Happy Friday.
Hi, thank you for having me back. I'm fine, thank you. The Robins are back in New Jersey, and I'm happy that it's spring.
Me too. Me too.
Awesome. Well, hey, we're looking at all the stuff that's going on. Notice that you wrote a couple interesting articles, and one that really stuck out to me with this Google and Taiwan. What's up with clean tech? I mean, we're talking about some very interesting pieces here.
Okay, so specifically, you're talking about the international energy procurement deal that they made in Taiwan for solar power, which is interesting for a number of different reasons. First, a little bit backdrop. Google, for those of you in the audience who are not following this as closely as I do, I'm obsessed with it, is one of the biggest investors in clean energy from a corporate standpoint. So they're making a lot of deals to contract for solar and wind power in order to run their operations. So in the cases where the electricity isn't actually on the grid where they're operating, they're making these sort of virtual deals that cover their energy usage. And it's quite fascinating the way they're using also AI to help sort of make sure that they're using the clean power whenever possible and sort of transferring actually their supply from place to place. The Taiwan deal is interesting for several different reasons. First of all, a lot of their deals so far have been in the United States, and that's been because the regulatory infrastructure here has been, in certain places at least, been more conducive to getting those deals done. And actually, in the places where it's not very, very easy to get it done, Google has done a fine job of working directly with utilities in order to convince them to invest in solar or wind or whatever. Places like Taiwan don't have any kind of deals of this nature. That this is a sort of a first of its kind deal. So Google not only had to figure out the regulatory infrastructure, they had to go in and convince people over a period of months and years that this was a good thing to support. They had to go and really talk to the national level government. They also had to figure out how, from a land standpoint, they could get this done. And so what makes this deal doubly interesting is that they're putting the solar panels like over fields, like where there's water. So it's just a different usage. People think, oh my God, what can you do with the land? And in places like Taiwan, there isn't, it's challenging. So where they've wanted to put the panels, it's been hard to do so. And so they're taking a look at putting them over like different marshes and things like rice paddies and agricultural farms. So it's very cool for those two reasons.
Cool.
Wow, that's wonderful. My parents are from Taiwan. That's why it's really caught up my attention there. So, well,
if you look at Apple, they've done a lot of deals on, actually in Singapore, they've done lots of deals on rooftops. So the tech sector's in there as well. And Apple, I do have to say, in China, where it is also very, very hard to do this, Apple has been bending over backwards to help its suppliers. So like it's going in to do this on behalf of their major supply chain partners, to help get the policies in place and then help finance them. So cool.
You mentioned Google and Apple, number 2, 3 biggest companies in the world. And you recently wrote about big picture view of big companies in terms of the climate movement. And you said as of mid-February, only 109 members of the Fortune 500, which you identified as iconic list of largest U.S. companies, were on board with at least one of the 7 iconic programs supported by businesses dedicated in-house gas emissions. So, we talked about 2 big companies. Where are we in terms of, commitments to sustainability development goals, which the UN identified in 2015, where we're going to be by 2030? And how are big companies, really getting involved to achieving these goals?
Yeah, so for those, again, I find myself in the definition mode here on this one, because I don't, if I were to say sustainable development goals to my friends and family, I bet they would be like, what are you talking about? But for those who haven't followed this, again, as obsessively as I do, the United Nations has put in place these basically 17 sort of principles for guiding development in the future. They were adopted in 2015. It's things like number 3 is ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all ages. There's a big focus on gender equality, achieving gender equality and really enriching the lives of women and girls, and clean energy, ensuring access to clean, modern energy. So that's what these goals mean. They're called sometimes the global goals, and there's a lot of them. And they're really focused on what countries need to do. However, the money is going to come from businesses, big companies, and so forth. And what a number of these organizations have figured out is that many of their corporate sustainability goals actually align with many of these sustainable development goals. So this provides a way of a company working more closely with federal, national actors and state actors, if you will, and actors meaning the policy, the governments around the world, in order to actually maybe get more of a traction for their own programs. And so we've seen a lot of big companies. I've seen a lot of big companies sort of commit to this at the very high level. I'll just name 2 that are popping into my head just right on this at this moment. Mars, right? So the big food company Mars, and then MasterCard, for example. And I'll use a MasterCard example just to kind of give you a thumbnail of that. But I think I want to talk a little bit more deeply about what Mars is doing, because it kind of maps into another sort of thing that I'm following, is how do you justify these investments? How do you prove return to your C-suite? My MasterCard example is, I mean, let's be clear and honest. These are going to be kind of self-serving, right? So MasterCard is very, I mean, they are. I mean,
they are. That's what I'm laughing.
They have to serve the interests of the company. And so what MasterCard is keyed in on a bunch of these things. So they're going in and to various, I think one of theirs aligns with the women, the gender equality thing. So they've come up with programs to help entrepreneurs in emerging economies finance themselves, with various services, sort of the microfinancing thing that movement that has been in place. So MasterCard has kind of pinned themselves to that's one of the ones they pin themselves. There's a lot. I mean, if you go and look on the websites of any big company, they will say they're doing this. Now, where it gets trickier is what are they actually doing, right? They say they're doing this. They say that they like to do this, but what are they actually pulling off? And I love, Mars is, I have a couple of reasons for liking Mars. I've always been obsessed with them because my dad used to work for them a million years ago. But they have this plan called Sustainable in a Generation. And they've basically, they've sort of pinned their whole corporate strategy to addressing certain areas of the Sustainable Development Goals. And they have programs in place that are very clearly aligned with them. There's something that they have, I don't remember the exact name of the program, but it's basically focused on smallholder farmers. So in other words, pardon me?
Yeah, no, I remember seeing that. Yes.
Yeah, so I think it's called the Livelihoods Fund, and they might have, but basically what their philosophy is that if we go into these small communities where there are lots of smallholder farmers, which grow the things that we need for our products, like rice and cocoa and all sorts of manners of commodities, if we teach them to do this more sustainably, it will serve our interests, right? It will serve our interests. It will serve their interests, because they may also find a better economic opportunity by growing their food in their crops in a more sustainable way. Now, okay, so how do you, this kind of fund, it's very tricky. Like, how do you measure that? And so, it's one of those hard things. I mean, it's pretty easy to see cash equals what's the return. It's very easy for, I shouldn't say it's very easy. It's very straightforward for traditional managers to be able to go into their C-suite and say, I want to do this. Here's the return. This is the time frame. Boom. Well, it's harder to go in and say, hi, I want to invest in these farmers, and this is what I think the return will be. And this, but yeah, I mean, but what Mars has done is they've been able to, their team has been really smart. So what they've done is said, we can link this to a more sustainable and stable supply. We can better, we can put long-term contracts in place that are good for us, where we know what the supply will be. It's more sustainable, and we can get this, we can pay this price. Right. And we will have less risk. We will have less risk if we work with these suppliers versus buying our crops just sort of more in a commodity marketplace, where we don't know what these suppliers are doing. Are they going to be flooded? Will they be able to grow in the future? We don't know. So volatility, reputation, it helps make for a more stable supply chain. So the sustainability team at Mars has been able to sort of turn those into metrics of return. So I'm being very long-winded, but that's just one really great example of how you turn an intangible into a tangible thing that the C-suite could probably really appreciate.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, we're seeing a lot of stuff in the livelihoods fund, and both the carbon fund and the family farming fund, I think, is the two big ones that they have.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting stuff. I think the whole premise when they started was the fact that the farmers weren't even they were farming, but they couldn't even feed themselves. So
right,
it's pretty interesting to see how that evolved to what we're talking about.
And they've actually, I mean, it's very hard to do this at a community level, because I mean, the perception is, I'm this big bad company coming in and I'm trying to influence you, and there's a lot of suspicion. So they have to, I mean, it's very delicate and tricky for them to do stuff like this.
Absolutely.
Okay, now I want to get to something you wrote today.
Oh no!
How does 5G wireless and come together? How does that work? It's kind of interesting to see that. So
what's that? The Sacramento thing?
Yeah, the Sacramento 5G wireless mobility innovation and a dose of climate reality.
Right. So if you think about
the podcast was kind of interesting with Joe and Katie. So
right. So the specific thing that you're talking about is what they're doing in Sacramento around 5G investments. So the chief innovation officer there, Lewis Stewart, is been there. I think he's been there at least a couple of years now. But he's focused on driving the strategy for autonomous vehicles, for other sort of transportation investments within the city, like electric vehicles and so forth. And he looks at 5G as integral for this for a number of reasons. First of all, because you need the data, right? And you need data in real time. And so they believe that if they create this sort of test bed, by putting that network in place, that they can be an attractive place for some of these pilots, so they're putting what they're trying to do is make it a attractive place to test these services, and B, make it, maybe get some money out of it, right? Mm-hmm. So it makes them more attractive as a place of doing that. I love what they're thinking about in Sacramento with AVs, because I think when I say autonomous vehicle on this podcast, most people probably immediately think passenger vehicle. Right. And that is not what they're thinking about. They're thinking about shuttles that take senior citizens to to their doctor's appointments, or people, small shuttles that go into communities that are low income and can get these people to jobs and so forth. And how do you do that? And how do you re-divert a vehicle from one place to another in real time? And that's why the 5G investment is so important. But by the way, that's just passengers. Deliveries is a whole nother thing. Like as you're trying to manage congestion within a city and cut down on the number of cars and so forth that are on the roads, you need it to be able to divert and maybe send someone to a depot in this area of town where people can then walk or take an e-scooter or whatever and get their packages. So that's,
they refer to it making I believe a mobility hub is what they want.
Yeah. And I think, the thing about it is, as we know, the rail investments are so hard to justify. I mean, you guys are you're living it with, and it seems to be hard and everywhere, rail system, people don't want to invest in it. So I think that's short term, especially in urban climates, urban environments, this is
we're waiting for the boring company to help us out. Ray, I have a question for you. Can we use the word badass on DisrupTV?
Oh.
Is that okay, Ray?
We've got no FCC limitations. I think we'll be okay.
Okay, all right. Because Heather wrote about 25 badass women shaking up the corporate climate movement. And in your piece, you reference a 16-year-old, Greta Thunberg, who was just nominated for Pulitzer Prize. I'm sorry,
Nobel Peace Prize
for peace. And it was a movement where we're gonna skip one day of school to bring attention to something that's frankly, according to her, is being ignored and needs to be a house on fire type emergency, I believe is her analogy. Talk to us about these incredible women who are really creating this revolution and visibility towards climate movement.
So I just will, in full disclosure, will admit that I actually had like way more than 25. It was really hard to actually cut this one back, but to talk about Greta specifically, she's just an incredible young woman. Who, and every time I tell someone that the kids are skipping school, they're like, "What? The whole day?" I'm like, "No, it's actually 2 hours in the afternoon every Friday." And actually, she inspired this movement. I mean, you probably remember last week. In the all around the world, there were kids that were doing the same thing, the protests all over the place. But I think what I love about her is, number one, that she just is so persistent. She does her thing. She gets out there. She talks. She's really pushing herself out of her comfort zone. I believe she has Asperger's, and she is really hard for her to talk to people. And that to me even speaks more about how important this is for her. Right. But when she's been at Davos. She also spoke at the COP, the climate talks last fall, and she got there by like train. And I mean, she won't fly. She lives it. Right. So the other people, there's a lot of people within organizations that I was recognizing. For example, Danone, Deanna Bratter, she helped them earn the largest B Corp certification of any company around the world. So, and that means that basically they are for the benefit of the public and for society, as well as shareholders and employees. And they have their processes built around that. The woman that negotiated the Paris Agreement, Christiana Figueres, Lisa Jackson with Apple. I mean, just incredible investments and create back to the creativity. How creative is it that Apple is financing this stuff for their supply chain? I mean, and believe me, it takes a lot to get deals done in China with clean energy. So anyway, so that's just 3 of the 25 people that I wrote about.
Ray and I are hoping that someday you'll do a badass men doing video podcasts.
Well, you know what I want to do is a badass allies, right? Because I've always been struggling with, I've always struggled with lists of women because partly because I'm a woman, and I always feel like, hey, everyone does their thing. We should all judge everyone by their own merits. But I do feel like I would love to do an allies list, like men who are particular allies of women and helping women get, find their place in the world.
I think your list was terrific. I think it's really important to recognize people that are putting their, political capital on the line and effort and energy towards things that are bigger than themselves, bigger than their companies, and frankly, will help their children and grandchildren live in a better world. So keep making those lists. I think it's important to recognize people that are doing great work. And
I'm
so
working on
our
2020.
list. If you ever had a list, you'd be at the top of the list.
Talking about lists more and green tech, we are here with Heather Clancy, Editorial Director of GreenBiz Group, one of our awesome guests on a Friday. So thanks for being here. If you can follow her on Twitter at Green Tech Lady, catch her blog, catch her podcast, and more importantly, catch her in the green. So hey, thanks a lot for being on the show. Happy Friday.
I don't know what that means, but thank you. Bye.
Take care.
You're the best. Yeah, she's one of my
Episode 141. This has been great, man. We've gone from cognitive apps to being creative around AI and to make it all sustainable all in one episode.
It's what a privilege, Ray. Think about it. You know, we're getting close to 350 unique guests, and every Friday we sit here and we learn from real trailblazers, real change agents, and people that are making a difference. And next week is no exception. We have Anna Turman, Division CIO at Catholic Health Initiatives. We have Tom Stanford, Vice President and CIO at Halifax Health. And we have David Chow, who was formerly one of the top CIOs in healthcare, and now he's Vice President, Principal Analyst at Constellation Research. So clearly the theme is healthcare innovation and how we can leverage emerging technologies to improve quality of healthcare. And it's going to be an amazing show, must watch. I was going to say television, but we're not television. And yeah, those side things are really cool, Ray.
We're gonna get back to this.
Yeah.
No, but hey, it's Friday. It's Disrupt TV show. Catch us 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, and catch Vala all.
So, welcome to Disrupt TV. Thanks for watching the show.